They said he'd break his neck before he ever broke gravity. They laughed when he rolled that battered old board up the cracked concrete slope, knees wrapped, helmet scuffed, eyes burning with something no one else could name. To them, it was madness, a guy chasing a trick that physics had politely declined 1,000 times before. But to him, it was oxygen. He couldn't breathe without it. He'd tried to explain it once, that tiny window between takeoff and fall, that half second where the world stopped asking questions. But words never worked. So he stopped trying to convince them. He just kept climbing that ramp every morning, before the city was awake enough to remind him he was ordinary. The locals called him Crazy Kai. The name stuck after the first broken wrist, the third failed rotation, the seventh hospital visit. Every scar was a punchline for someone else, but a paragraph in his story. When others clocked out, he clocked in. He wasn't built like the pros. He didn't have sponsors, gear, or even a proper camera crew. Just a phone duct taped to a fence and a best friend who believed that maybe, just maybe, insanity and genius were the same thing seen from opposite angles. And today, the light felt different. The wind had that razor edge that made air feel alive. The kind of morning when possibility doesn't whisper, it screams. "Ready?" his friend asked, half smiling, half worried. Kai nodded, checking his board one more time. The grip tape was peeling, the wheels uneven, but that was part of the story. The perfect board never taught anyone how to fall. He climbed the ramp again, slow and deliberate, boots scraping metal, heartbeat syncing with the thrum of the wind. From up there, the city looked distant, like a memory fading at the edges. He could see the graffiti that read, "Don't try this." He smiled at it like an old friend. 3 rotations, clean landing, he whispered. No more, no less. Down below, a few early risers had gathered. Some held phones. Most just shook their heads. They'd seen him crash too many times to believe this would end differently. The countdown wasn't loud. It was internal, 3, 2, 1. He pushed off. The world tilted, then dissolved into motion. Wheels bit the ramp, momentum screamed, muscles remembered pain and refused to care. He launched. For one impossible second, gravity forgot him. Then everything went wrong. The rotation snapped too early. His shoulder twisted. The board slipped an inch offline, just enough to turn landing into chaos. He hit hard, tumbled, and the gasp of the crowd was almost louder than the impact. Silence. Then the voice of his friend, "You good?" Kai lay there, staring at the pale sky. His chest burned, but his mind was still spinning with the trick. He wasn't angry. He was measuring. Timing. Calculating the mistake. Again, he said quietly. His friend blinked. "Man, you can't even." Again. The crowd murmured, unsure if they were watching determination or a slow-motion breakdown. But Kai wasn't hearing them anymore. He was already walking back up. Every step left a smear of dust and blood on the ramp. He reset. Adjusted the stance. Inhaled. Exhaled. The pain didn't fade, it focused. Someone shouted, "Give it up, crazy." He didn't look down. He just smiled. That voice was fuel. Second attempt. Faster. Sharper. The air met him like an adversary. His body remembered what failed and corrected. 1 rotation. 2. Almost 3, but not enough. He clipped the edge. Fell sideways. Rolled. The board snapped clean in half. The phones caught it. The internet would too. The fall would be replayed, remixed, memed, proof that crazy people don't learn. But the thing about obsession is that it's immune to embarrassment. By sunset, the spot was empty. The crowd gone. Only Kai and his friend remained, sweeping splinters off concrete. "You're gonna kill yourself chasing this," his friend muttered. Kai wiped the sweat off his brow. "Nah. I'm gonna live chasing it. That night, the footage went viral, not for the failure, but for the silence after. The look in his eyes. That 1,000-yard stare of someone who refused to surrender to statistics. Comments flooded in: legend, idiot, respect, madman. It didn't matter which word they chose, every one of them was watching. 3 days later, he was back. Same ramp. New board. Same bruise-colored sunrise. This time, there was no crowd. Just a drone camera and the echo of his own footsteps. The air was colder, sharper, but calm in a way that warned of storms. He ran his hand along the metal edge. You and me again, he said to the ramp. Let's finish our argument. He took a longer run up. Every muscle was a wire drawn tight. He could feel every failed attempt stitched under his skin. Push. Lean. Launch. The board kissed the air like an old lover. 1 rotation, smooth. 2, balanced. 3. The board snapped straight under him. Gravity clawed back its due. Impact. Roll. Breath. Darkness. When he woke, everything smelled like antiseptic. His leg was bandaged, shoulder immobilized. His friend was in the chair beside him, phone in hand. News wants an interview, his friend said softly. You're trending again. #crazy Kai. Kai smiled, eyes half open. They still don't get it, huh? His friend frowned. Get what? Kai turned his head toward the window, where the city lights blurred into stars. That I'm not chasing the landing. I'm chasing who I become before I land it. Days turned into weeks. Casts came off. Scars hardened. He replayed every fall in his head until they became coordinates on a map toward perfection. One evening, as the sun turned gold against the concrete, Kai limped back to the ramp. No cameras. No audience. Just the whisper of wind and a heart that refused to beat quietly. He stared at the top, that same steep incline that had tried to bury him more times than he could count. You've had your turn, he muttered. Now it's mine. The push felt heavier this time, but purer. Every second stretched. Every motion simplified. The trick wasn't about conquering air anymore, it was about surrendering to it. He left the ramp clean. The first spin flowed like rhythm. The second clicked into place. The third, perfect symmetry. He landed. Not a stumble. Not a save. A clean, grounded, defiant landing that made the universe pause to take attendance. For a heartbeat, silence ruled. Then a laugh, raw, unfiltered, human. No cameras. No proof. Just the sound of a man and gravity finally agreeing on terms. He didn't post it. Not right away. He just sat at the edge of that ramp, legs dangling over the side, breathing in the quiet. The city stretched beneath him, a living organism of steel and ambition, full of people chasing things they didn't understand. Somewhere down there, someone was quitting their dream because it hadn't worked yet. He laughed softly. Don't quit on the yet part, he said to no one. When he finally shared the clip, it wasn't edited. No music. No slow motion. Just the sound of wheels, wind, and impact, the full story, uncut. And somehow, that made it real. The internet didn't explode this time. It ignited slowly, like a fuse. 1 share became 10, 10 became thousands. Not because he landed it, but because of what came before, the falls, the silence, the moments everyone thought were the end. People recognized themselves in those bruises. He'd become the mirror of their own unfinished stories. Comments changed tone. Less crazy, more respect. Some wrote, I needed this today. Others said, I don't even skate, but this hit deep. Brands called. Interviewers called. He ignored most of them. He wasn't interested in the noise anymore. He'd already heard the loudest sound there was, the sound of finally landing. But the story didn't end there, because obsession never clocks out. The trick wasn't the destination, it was the doorway. He started teaching neighborhood kids, most of whom had only ever seen skateboards on screens. They came with cracked helmets, secondhand shoes, and eyes full of disbelief. First lesson, he told them, standing at the bottom of the ramp, you're gonna fall. A lot. But that's good, falling means you're ahead of the ones too scared to try. They laughed, not sure if he was serious. But when they saw the scars up close, they understood. He taught them not just how to land, but how to fall right. How to respect the ground instead of fearing it. The ramp became a classroom, and every bruise a diploma. One evening, a kid no older than 12 asked him, "Did it hurt, when they called you crazy?" Kai looked at the sunset bleeding orange over the skyline. "Yeah," he said quietly. "But it would have hurt more if they'd been right." The kid nodded, storing that sentence somewhere deep in his heart, the kind of wisdom that doesn't fade. As the weeks passed, Kai's story traveled beyond screens. Documentaries reached out. Motivational pages quoted him. But the one thing that truly mattered came in a letter, handwritten, shaky, from a veteran who'd lost his leg and his hope. It read, "I saw your fall. And then I saw you stand again. I figured if you can fight gravity, maybe I can fight mine." He read it twice, then placed it beside his old broken board, still hanging on the wall like a relic. Sometimes, crazy is the only language courage speaks. By now, the ramp was no longer his enemy. It was his confession booth, a place where pain turned into purpose. He'd climb it on quiet nights just to think. Sometimes he'd just roll down slowly, no tricks, no cameras. Just motion. Just peace. The same people who once called him insane now invited him to talk to schools, sports clubs, even recovery groups. He never prepared speeches. He just told the truth. "I didn't land it because I was fearless. I landed it because I learned to use fear as fuel." The words stuck with people. Maybe because they weren't polished. They were real. Months later, the city hosted a street sports event. Floodlights. Sponsors. Thousands of eyes. And the organizers asked him to do one thing, repeat the trick. The crowd chanted his name, echoing through the night like a heartbeat. Standing at the top of the ramp again, he felt that same old wind on his face. But it wasn't the same story anymore. It wasn't him versus gravity. It was him and gravity, partners in crime. He took a deep breath, let the noise fade, and smiled. Let's give them one for the books. The drop was perfect. Smooth, confident. One spin, flawless. 2 spins, balanced. 3, effortless. 4, new. He went beyond the trick that had once defined his limits. When he landed, the noise didn't sound like cheers anymore. It sounded like history catching up. That moment went global. Not because it was flashy, but because it meant something. It was proof that sometimes, the ones called crazy are just the first to see the future from a higher angle. Later that night, when the lights were off and the cameras gone, he sat alone on the ramp, staring at the sky again. His friend walked up, 2 cups of coffee in hand. "You did it again," his friend said. Kai smiled. "No. We did. You filmed every fall, remember?" They clinked paper cups. Silence stretched, the good kind. "You ever gonna stop?" his friend asked. Kai shook his head. "If I stop chasing the impossible, what do I chase next?" The friend laughed softly. "Guess that's what makes you crazy." Kai looked at the stars. "Nah. That's what makes me human." He didn't know what would come next, bigger ramps, higher jumps, maybe something entirely new. But it didn't matter. The point wasn't what he'd land next. The point was that he'd keep showing people it could be done. And somewhere, in 1,000 different cities, kids and dreamers and broken adults watched that clip, that impossible landing, and whispered the same words he once did on his darkest day. Again. Because maybe that's what real legacy is, not a record, not a highlight reel, but a ripple that convinces others to try one more time. They'll call the next dreamer crazy too. They always do. But maybe now, thanks to him, that word won't sound like an insult anymore. It'll sound like a challenge.